Yeah, but what exactly do you do here?
Hui, chica, tata.
That really didn't clarify things for me. Oh, hello there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Casey Fatchett. If you've never listened to this show before, hey, welcome. In addition to providing entertaining and informative photography-related information, I also go on adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. While you're here, please be sure to subscribe to the show and, maybe share it with a photographer friend of yours. If you already subscribe to the show and you haven't left a review yet, why? What's stopping you? Come on. Everybody's doing it.
Nina.
Hey, listen, you're not instilling me with confidence here. I'm trying to teach this alien race about the importance of presenting their needs directly. Speaking of presentation, on this episode of the podcast, I'm talking to photo editor and visual creative director Karen Williams about how those job positions interact with photographers and how photographers can better present their work to the people who can hire them or choose their photos for publication. All that after the break. Okay, so now I know that you're hungry. Wait, what do you guys eat? Hey there, Nerdy Photo Crew. There's one thing you should never be caught without as a professional photographer, and that's a good contract, both for dealing with your clients and dealing with subcontractors that you may work with along the way. Be sure to head over to nerdyphotographer.com and go to our shop and find our contract templates for portrait photography, event photography, wedding photography, as well as dealing with second photographers, associate photographers, and any other subcontractors that you might have. Check it out and keep your business safe. Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and I'm here today with Karen Williams, Black Visual Queen. As we're going to talk a little bit about how presentation matters to photographers. Before we get into that, before we get into introducing Karen further, we're going to do the dice breaker. Let me roll things out here, and it's an 11, and that means we are going to. If you were forced to drop everything else you were doing, work, everything, and learn a new skill, what would it be, Karen?
Oh, wow. Can it be two skills?
Sure.
I would say the number top thing, I probably would want to learn I probably want to learn coding, because I feel like that would take me coding and engineering in that lane, because I feel like that would take me very far in this life. And then the other, because I've always wanted, because when I was in high school, I learned French. I think I would want to learn other languages as well.
Do you know any other languages?
I barely know French. That was the only one I could read it a little bit, and I learned a little Italian, enough to get me by, but speaking it is another another skill.
Understanding,
yes.
I can do in a few languages. Spanish especially, I'm pretty good at understanding Spanish just from living in New York, and also my wife is half Argentinian, and there's a lot of Spanish spoken in her family, so I understand it very well. I can't, choosing verbs, I'm just yeah, but sometimes people will be speaking Spanish next to me, and I'll understand it's a joke, and I'll chuckle and and they look at me like, wait, what? Yeah, I think that I don't know, it's weird how you think of when we think of skills. I think that for some reason I think of things like farming. I'm a gardener, and there are things that I think I could know better about, planting things, and if I needed to sustain myself with that, but I already kind of have that skill, so I don't know. Tough. I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Getting back to the ground, getting back to earth,
yeah,
to your roots. I feel like everyone did that, during the pandemic, because I know when I would go and just try to get seeds, they would be they're all gone.
Yes, a lot of people did that.
Grow our own food.
I was doing that before. It's just because I grew up in the Midwest, in farm country, and so we always had a garden, and I had lived in New York for 20 years, then moved to New Jersey where I could actually have a garden. And I was like, I'm going to build a garden. So yeah, that's been for a while now. And having a garden is very relaxing. And I understand why so many people were like, this is something I'm going to do and get in touch with the ground again. I think that's very helpful. Anyway, you are you have been a photo editor for more than 15 years. You have been a creative director or are a creative director. I don't think that everybody in the photography industry necessarily understands what those roles are. I think we'll start with photo editor. Like, what, you're not like photoshopping stuff. What is a photo editor's role, and how should photographer, like, to understand what the role of a photo editor is?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a big fan of the show. So yeah, like many of you, and like especially my family, when I would like say, "Oh, I'm a photo editor," like what? Because I would be like, I got my start in editorial, and I would be like, I'm going to be a photo editor, and literally having to sit down with my parents and explain exactly what I did at like this month's issue for the magazine. So basically, a photo editor, it kind of combines a lot of things, because back in the day when photo departments, if you're lucky, when you had a full kind of team, you would have like your photo intern, your photo assistant, your photo researcher, then you would have photo editor, then you would have maybe a senior photo editor, then you went into like maybe assistant, like photo director, and then the photo director was like the head of the department, which is being kind of like the manager of of the department. So the photo editor does a little bit of like kind of like all of those kind of jobs and positions where you have, as a photo editor in a magazine, and I'm just going to use that in context because that's where you hear that term the most in editorial. Basically, you are doing a little bit of like, you are in charge of basically helping to provide the visuals for the magazine, for stories, either in print or web. So you could be, for a story, okay, we're doing, a whole, look back at Cher's career. So instead of maybe producing a shoot because you can't get Cher, okay, you got to do photo research throughout her careers, that hit these certain things in the timeline that you're reading the content for, right?
Right.
Or maybe you are able to shoot Cher. So as a photo editor, okay, you're working with the team of like art directors and the creative directors of coming up with a concept of how you want to shoot. Then you, as a photo editor, you are coming up with photo options, photographer options to match the concepts that were presented. Or maybe there's a wild card of, I know we were talking about this, but maybe we pivot and do this, so you're in a sense, as a photo editor, you're helping to create the imagery in the magazine for each story, whether that is through research or producing shoots, or maybe photo illustrations where the art department, the designer comes in like, hey, I want to do this illustration. Can you go and research cars that we can put into this from iStock and create the, art piece?
Right. There's a lot
That's kind of like a little bit in a nutshell, but it's like a little bit of everything. I always say as a photo editor, you kind of do a little bit of everything because you're kind of a lawyer, because you have to tell people and editors like, yes, I'm glad you found this on Google. Okay. So, did you get permission to use it? Or we're chasing down, releases, we're making sure, there's production elements to this job. And it really depends on the place you're at, because I've been a photo, editor on a team of one. That's just me. And so I'm doing everything. Right. And I've been on part of photo teams where, okay, I get to work on maybe just the photo art direction part of it and not the production, because there's a whole production team who does that logistical side of that.
Right. But you're like still like in touch with them and part of that. Yeah. I think there's Oh man, there's so many conversations I want to have. Like, I don't want to get sidetracked into like copyright and like people just pulling stuff off of Google. I had it happen to me once where somebody took an engagement photo from one of my blog posts and put it up on a dating site. Like it was because it was like New York singles or whatever. And they just like, because these people were, their engagement photo was on the Brooklyn Bridge. And they're like, well, this just says New York. And they just put this photo of these people up there. And I was like, somebody, one of my photographer friends emailed me. He was, hey, did you get paid for this? And I was like, paid for what? He sent me the link. And I was like, no. So I was
Go ahead.
It was an intern. Mm-hmm. And the photo editor was like, it was down within like 30 seconds. Almost of like me like calling the photo editor. It was just like, no, because it was connected to a publication, which I will not name because they did handle it appropriately. But yeah, I was like, this is not good. Like this sort of thing. He's like, yeah, this should have gotten approval from somebody. And they're like, we're going to find out where in the chain things went wrong. But like, yeah, it was like, it's not, no, you can't just, and the intern was under the impression, oh, it's online. I can use it and do whatever I want with it.
And a story kind of like, that's kind of like a spin off of that to kind of write on that is that, as a photo editor, because you're looking at images. And so you're, a lot of part of this job, people don't understand that you have to kind of understand the legal side of it and understand that you just can't pull things from anywhere. So there was this kind of famous photo of David Finch from a stock site, because when you do a lot of photo research, you're like, oh, look, this is such an awesome image.
Right.
And then to find out, no, a photographer took a photo of a photo. And if you're a good photo editor, you will understand, oh, yeah, I remember that image. That was a cover or something. I don't think that should be on this iStock site, right? And then someone is pulling that and saying, hey, but it was here on whatever, photo stock site you want to say, insert here. But that is skills that you should have as a photo editor to be like,
yeah,
I know, but I don't think you want to, start this legal battle.
Right.
This,
yeah, we don't want to
original source.
Richard Prince
and exactly. So a good photo editors, appreciate us. I feel like sometimes we're not, appreciated. We help, publications and brands not get sued and or telling you we're always trying to find that source and trying to get that, release signed, or if this person paid, to make sure we have the rights to use that.
I think that's something that especially younger photographers might not have as much knowledge about is the usage fees. Like there was a recent job that I was up for, and they wanted to take basically every photo that I took at the job and use them in perpetuity for whatever they wanted, including advertising. And I was like, no, that's not I'm not signing an agreement like that. And they hired somebody else, and I asked them why. And they said, because we found someone who would not limit usage or the number of images. And I was like, well, that person just threw away a lot of money because this was a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they could certainly afford to, if they decided to use something for ads, they could certainly afford to do that. But it's something that photographers don't understand is that there's a difference between copyright and usage and licensing images for, magazines or for print or for whatever. And that is, I think it seems overwhelming. It's something that's still when I think of trying to come up with licensing fees, you have to think of things like, what's the market?
Yep.
How long are they using it for? What is the, are we allowing, is it for editorial use? Is it for, advertising? All those sorts of things that come in. And the photo editor is the person who's responsible for, making sure that all of that stuff runs smoothly and everybody is protected, because nobody wants a lawsuit. Nobody wants a lawsuit. It just,
and I glad you bring that up, because it's I'm currently in the process of writing a book called The Photo Hustle, which is going to go into this and talking to lawyers who do with this. So again, I'm not a lawyer. So again, consult a legal.
I know a lot of lawyers.
But I always tell photographers, please do not shoot us. We are not the bad guys. When you're working with corporations, the contracts that we are handing to you, we did not write. it's their lawyer. So think about when you are presenting a contract to your client, who is it probably going to be in favor towards more? Probably you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fit just like company. What you do with the contract, you just need to know to read it. And if you need to go to a legal to help you understand and like, hey, maybe they can point out again, maybe I always say there's always room for negotiation.
Right.
But if you blanket say, I'm just not going to sign it, and blah, 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 well, they're going to probably move on to someone else where usually there is some wiggle room from certain termage and sometimes it's not. And I always come back and be like, okay, I went to the legal team. We're able to, reword this and this, but this is a hard no.
Right.
And I always say it's up to each photographer, is it worth it for you? I always phrase it as, if you do this job, is the outcome or the images that you produce, the products you produce, going to help you get those jobs you're wanting?
Right.
Because you have it in your portfolio.
Yeah.
And I always say it's an individual decision for each and every person.
Right. I think that there's like, for the job that I was mentioning, I had gone back to them with like, here's two options, because we'd already talked about budget. And I said, here are two options, like number of photos, how long the license is for, whatever, and like usage. And I came with two different things. These are both in your budget. That's how I personally work. Come back with some options. We'll see if there's any wiggle room. And they just decided like, well, we want to pay somebody and just get all the pictures, because we don't want to have to go back and worry about like, if we decide to use them 5 years from now and we go back and see this photo and we're like, well, we don't have to bother with like negotiating prices then. I think that for photographers, what you're saying is exactly true. Go back, negotiate. Don't be so afraid of getting your foot in the door, which is important, that you shoot yourself in the foot on something that could, like that, where it is a specific disadvantage for you to sign the contract. Again, try to negotiate a little bit. Have a lawyer look over it. I am not a lawyer either. My wife works for a bunch of lawyers, so I have had people give feedback. So like knowing a little bit of it is good. If it gets to a point where it's sticky, definitely employ someone with legal expertise. Not me. Don't listen to me. And disclaimer: we are not providing legal advice.
Lawyers.
You also work as a creative director, a visual creative director. So how is that different from like, I know, you're kind of on another side of things as a creative director, than being a photo editor. What does being a creative director entail?
So a creative director looks at, like, if I'm a photo director, I'm usually, or a photo editor, and then I would say kind of akin to a creative director a little bit is like the photo director. So they're looking at let's say a photo director is looking at the photo department and the photography in the magazine or publication or brand holistically, of like, how is it working across? How you are, like, the photo director is trying to implement the creative director's vision, because that is what separates like kind of photo director and creative director. Creative director is looking at the whole of a brand or a publication, and that includes kind of the editorial side, design, and photography, and any other art. They are partnering with, the editor-in-chief of like, this is how I want to set the tone for this, or how this brand is going forward. And the creative director with, in partnership with like, the photo director and the editor-in-chief, and, they're coming up with the vision, of like, okay, this is how I see how the brand, like, this is the vision for design of like, creating the mood boards and kind of the brand, the grand guidelines basically. And then going to photography and working in tandem with photography, the photography department, and saying, okay, visually, this is what I'm looking, what are y'all looking at? And then, setting that overall kind of tone. So you're looking at it more as a creative director. Like when I'm working and getting projects as a creative director, I'm looking at the whole, like the brand as a whole, and making sure that what we do here is speaking the same language with all these other assets across these other parts, and nothing feels off, right? Like off brand, right? Making sure everything is fitting in the ecosystem.
Right. You're marrying all of the parts of the brand. So it's cohesive and staying on brand. Like that's
Exactly.
very like, that's where that phrase comes from. And also, like mood boards, but folks,
Yeah.
before Pinterest existed,
Yes.
you finding a mood. If you go into any magazine office, you would find like tons of mood boards, and just like is that's finding your inspiration and making sure
you still
everything.
have the wall. You still have the wall when we do the wall walkthrough.
Yeah.
When you're looking at, if that's like kind of like being creative or director, and when people like in editorial terms for people who's never been like in like these kind of wall meetings, is where when you're looking at the whole issue, like at a point, midway point where most of the art is in, and you're kind of like, how does this feel? Does something feel off? Does something need to be moved? Does something, because you want to create a flow.
Right.
So naturally, I always say the creative director is like trying to create this flow and making sure everything is flowing within this kind of brand guideline ecosystem. So nothing feels like it's out of place.
Yeah,
so
you don't
someone
want
sees something here, it's going to relate back to the brand.
Right. You don't want it to like something to stand out as being not fitting in. Because that draws attention to it, and people are like, "What's going on with that? Like that doesn't feel right." And you want to create this, like I think the word ecosystem is perfect because it's sort of like it is this sort of enclosed environment in which your brand lives, and like there may be outside influences or whatever, but like you're keeping it, you're trying to keep it, whatever those things, terrariums. I just think of like people grow something in like this sealed like glass ball, like that's kind of where the brand is. And you don't want outside stuff getting in there and messing up the ecosystem. So
exactly,
for photographers, knowing photo editors and creative directors and presenting your work to them helps you get jobs. Why do you believe that presentation is crucial in the photography industry?
I think coming from, this is my perspective as a Black woman in this industry, so this is based on my experience. It's because usually the first thing when we are having to pitch, new photographers or just pitching, here's a roster of people who can do a job. The first thing people are looking at is the website and its visual. They want to know right away that you can do the job. And I think in today's climate of when, jobs are a little more scarcer or like budgets are shrinking, they want to feel assured, have the social proof that if we hire you, you can do the job inside and out. And that's why I am so passionate about preaching this. Like if you follow my socials at Black Visual Queen, like the number one thing I'm preaching is about presentation, because it can make and break you. I have heard creative directors, they want to be wowed, right? At this point. And so if we come to your website and it's chaotic and it's broken links and nothing, you're turning a lot of people off. Even if I know that you can do the job, if I know you can do the job, I think photographers should understand that photo editors, directors, or even creative directors are not the final say sometimes. We're working in the group. We're working with editors. We're working with, other stakeholders, and they're going to have opinions. So think about people who are non-visual who come to your site.
Yes.
And I always say, when I go to your site, or like an exercise for photographers, look at your site. What do you think people think about when they first see your site?
Yeah. I think that's like, it's such a lost thing. And like, I look around and I hire other photographers to work as subcontractors and, on events or on projects and things like that. Like I look at websites, or sometimes people will just like, they're sending me their Instagram. And I'm like, that is not a website. Instagram is not a website. It's like, that's just like
people want social proof,
right? They want to see also that you have put together a cohesive presentation of your portfolio, and learn more about you. And like,
and I always say, like, for creatives who just don't get it, because sometimes they don't get it. I always use this good old example People who know me, I just use it. Think about, okay, if you got a broken toilet, it's overflowing. You're looking for, a plumber. You got 2 plumbers. Plumber A, you go to their website, 24/7 plumbing. I got a YouTube channel. All the links work. Here's all their reviews. You're like, oh, there's the contact information. Here's all the, boom, boom, boom. Plumber B, okay, we got some broken links. Okay, they do plumbing, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Here's their pizzeria. Here's their, haircutting business. It's just like, I don't get how to navigate. I don't see a contact information. Now, that could be the best plumber in the world.
Right.
But instinctively, who are you going to want to reach out to? That is the same with photography. Now, again, there are photographers, but again, these are photographers who've been in the game for 20 years who refuse to have a website, or it's just like
people know
they're just never going to upgrade. But then again, they've built up their reputation. They've been in this industry. You know what they've shot.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? There are exceptions to the rule. But if you're coming up in this game, I always say people want to see social proof. So if you're saying, I want to shoot portraits, but all I see is food.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hard sell. Again, I might know you can do it because I've seen what you've done. But I pass your website along to a famous chef or like a notable chef, and they, and it's a portrait shoot. You're like, yeah, I see, food, but where's the social proof for portraits? So I know you're going to do a good job.
Right. I mean, there should at least be easily findable categories and like that you can navigate to quickly and like get to the images that matter. And there is something to be said for if it's a particular niche, like if you do, like you should maybe consider having a website just for that type of work. Like I have a wedding and event website. I also have a totally separate website for my corporate work because corporate does not want to see the wedding photos. They want to know, like, this is a very similar thing. This is a conversation I've had with like my best photographer friend.
You're singing my language. I love you because the first thing they'll break it down. The first thing I tell photographers, this is like on our end, this is what we're usually looking for photo editors. Like I always tell like about website. First, we just want a website that loads quickly, has amazing curated portfolio. You do not put everything in a kitchen sink on there. You're putting your A list like on there. I need it to be easy to navigate. I need a contact information. And what I mean that is I want an email. You can have a form in an email, but do not have a form because we want to feel like we're reaching out to a real person.
Exactly.
And then location. And I know people would be like, I work worldwide. Well, that is fine and dandy, but a lot of people, not saying that people don't get hired to go on location, but 99% of the time, usually we're looking for someone local. So if you have that, don't get your heart broken when people are like, I love your work. Oh, you're not located in New York. You're located in Florida. I didn't know that.
Well, there are also I think that people fail to realize that sometimes there's legal issues around that too, especially I work worldwide. Yeah. Well, you don't have a visa to necessarily go to Australia and do this shoot.
Exactly.
And work for us there. So yeah, that can be, that's an issue. And I think that, yes, I always this is where I'm located. This is my home base of operations. Happy to discuss traveling somewhere else if that's something you want me to do. Yeah, I think that a lot of people think oh, I just want to I'm going to travel the world. There are, again, we got to pay. There's a lot of working rules, going to different countries. Yeah.
And I will caveat with the location. If you put a dual location, let's say the most popular is New York, LA. If I'm contacting you from LA and I have a job for you in New York and you're in LA, we are not expecting to pay for travel or room and board or anything.
Yeah, because you've listed that as
usually. Maybe we can spot you here's some
because you said you're bi-coastal
or something. But yeah, if you're saying you're bi-coastal or you work on these different things, the expectation on our side is oh, we don't have to worry about travel or room and board, lodging.
Yeah.
Because you can stay somewhere, and that we're not factoring that in the budget. Not saying you won't. There's not such situation where maybe we are able to do that, but just keep that in mind. That's why I tell photographers they come to me and I'm here, but I can stay here. So are you willing to be able to do that at cost to yourself, just in case they're not able to.
Right.
Because every time you say no, and you say that enough times, but you have that on your site, people will just stop calling you.
Yeah, because it's just like you're misrepresenting what the actual situation is, which
exactly.
is, I completely understand. I've worked with people where I thought like, oh, well, this means you're frequently in New York. Let's figure out like when you, oh no, I'm in San Diego. And it's just like, then why did you list New York as like one of the places that you are? That's not helping me. And they're like, well, it'd be this much for me to come to New York. Nope. Sorry. I'm going to find someone who is here or is here regularly enough that we can work around when that schedule is. And kind of like playing off that, like we were just discussing the, like what people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things people ask me a lot as far as like corporate work goes, they're like, oh, I want to get into these, I want to get these jobs. And the thing is, they don't necessarily want the greatest photographer. They want someone who is talented, but they want someone who is consistent. They know they can trust, because often like it's like they don't want those photos going anywhere. It's going to be strictly in-house, like it's just for like internal communications or whatever. And they just want to know that you are going to show up on time, and like they like to see the consistency when they come to the website and be like, okay, this is someone who is professional, will do exactly what we need, will provide us the deliverables in a timely manner, and it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who is, you don't need to blow them away with graphics on the website. You need to show them that is completely different from other types of photography, but that is one particular area where it's like you need to be specific to your audience and think about who your audience is and what they need to see, which is why you may consider having multiple websites for different types of work. There are some things where you can just say like, okay, here's my food work, here's my portrait work, here's my whatever, and that's fine. Like you have to consider who your audience is and who you're presenting your work to.
And I will say, it's not that you can't have other things. Like the example you gave, like, because a lot of photographers I work with and I coach and I do web edits for, if it's something like if you're going for top brands or editorial, I would. If you're a wedding photographer, I would separate that out, because we're not like privy to that, and so you're going to have a separate thing. Or like corporate, they're not going to be interesting. But consider it like you could be like a top food photographer, and you can do so many different genres within that thing. You could be like, I shoot chefs and I also shoot portrait, and I also shoot locations and the architecture and the restaurants, and I, travel. So you can have all that. It's hard to explain. I usually have to show examples, to photographers. Like when you look at some of these top photographers, like it's not, I always say, the people who get those consistent work, I know who you are visually. Like they develop their visual eye where it's like, I want a Joe photo, or I want a Ramona photo, or because it's like they've developed that eye and that aesthetic where, and I think this is the best place as a photographer, that people are coming to you because they like what you do. And then they may apply it to a niche that you might not have thought. Like, I know you might not be a food photographer. And trust me, we'll have like a stylist or something. We just want to shoot you a place, but we really just want you to do what you do to our product, or with this restaurant, and I always say that is, I think, the greatest thing that a photographer should aim for, versus trying to fit in and chase trends. No, that as a photo editor, I'm always looking for someone who knows who they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's hard because I don't think that's really taught really in schools. And you learn from the masters. Like I went to photography school. I love my Walker Evans. I love my Gordon Perks. Like the old G's. Okay. Yeah. I love those. I don't feel like we really were taught like, how do you develop that artistic eye? And that you have to continue to shoot to develop it.
Yeah. It's always evolving.
You can take it, you can borrow it. It's like, you can like, I like this, but then I always say, then what's your spin on that?
Yeah.
Because we don't want copycats, because you don't want to become the cheap version of someone else's stuff.
Right. You can innovate, you can emulate, or you can imitate. One of those three things. And, I find that emulation is good until you realize like, okay, this is what I liked about that. And now we mix these things together and we create our own special thing. Then we start innovating. You find, and it's okay. Like people, like you don't have to stay in the exact same style for your entire career as a photographer. You have to like have a visual signature. The goal is to have a visual signature that might change, over time, but like it needs to be something. It can't just be like a hodgepodge of all of these different things that you saw online that got attention. And so therefore you're just copying that to try to get, attention and get eyes on your work. And that can be a very difficult thing to do when you're starting out as a photographer, because you want people to see your work. So you're like, oh, I'm going to do the trendy thing that everybody else is doing, because then people will see my stuff. But that like trends tend to fade away pretty quickly. And then you're left with, you're just like you're trend jumping from one thing to another, and you don't really have any place to stand. And that's when people come to hire you for a job, not just getting likes and shares and follows. When somebody's coming to actually pay you for what you do, they want to see what you do. What is you? What is your visual language?
And I agree with you 100%. Everything you just said. And that's the thing. When you get hired, that's what we're hiring you for. So if you're saying you do that, but you're being hot-headed and you're just chasing trends and you haven't mastered it, that's going to show real quickly at a job. And if you bomb, that's worse than anything else, because then it's like, oh, we can't trust you, which I've been bamboozled on a before by a photographer where I looked at a website. Okay, look great. Went to the shoot, and then we had to do some CPR on those after images just to make it like, presentable. Like there was some photo illustration going on, just put stuff on that. Right. That's what we need. And it doesn't mean that. And I think what scares photographer is the word niche. And it's not that niche, it doesn't have to be about word. It's just like you have mastered something like A to Z. And like you said, you can evolve. It doesn't mean you have to stay in this one little place. You can start, master it. And then how do you evolve it from there? And it's not that you can't say, oh, but a lot of people come to me and I'm like, well, but I want to do everything. It's like, okay, that's good to do everything, but let's just focus on one good thing to get great and master that.
Yeah.
You can have the other things in the back of your pocket, because here's the thing. You get a shoot and the thing that you got hired for, maybe it doesn't work out, and you can be like, okay, I'm pulling out that toolkit of other things, and you can come up with other solutions.
Right.
Which that's what we want. We want photographers who can pivot and flexible if something happens, because that's usually what happens in 99.9% percent of shoots. Yeah. Something goes wrong, you got to pivot, and you have those other skill sets, then that comes in handy. But at the end of the day, when we get a creative brief, it's for something very specific.
Right.
So it could be like, we're looking for a photographer who shoots black and white and film and does collages.
Yeah. We want somebody who does mixed media.
So hyper specific. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, not everyone does that well. So we're going to look for a specific type of, probably this is like based on true jewelry. Like I found a fine art photographer who does that, and they do it so well. So it's like, when I give them that job, I know they know how to do it. They've mastered it. They've perfected it. So I know there's going to be little back and forth and little hand holding I'm going to have to do.
Right. And there's times when, like, listen, do I want jobs? Yeah. Are there things that I know that I do well? Absolutely. Are there things that I know I don't do well? Yes. And I'm not going to sell myself for a job that I know that I can't deliver what they want, because it's just going to make me look bad in the end. And they're not going to hire me for other jobs later on. Like somebody will come to me and they're like, oh, we want somebody who does wet plate photography. I don't do that. Could I learn? Sure. Would it be good? No. So it's like, I think that what you're looking for is, you're going to want to go in this direction towards this person who I know of who's, and I think that's the thing that people don't realize, is that if you're dealing with a creative director or a photo editor and somebody comes to you, like they somehow got and you tell them, listen, this isn't what I necessarily do, but I know somebody who does it, and you did them a favor. And you've now put yourself like, you saved them the time of like, we didn't go to this shoot, and you're sitting there trying to figure out the technique and maybe the result isn't good. So it's costing them time and money and frustration. So now they've got like a bad like taste in their mouths from dealing with you, instead of you just like said, hey, I'm going to save you that frustration and I'm going to point you in the direction of somebody who's really good at doing that thing. So the next time that you are looking for what I do really well, you're going to give me a call.
Remember that.
Right. Remember that you like, if it comes down to you and some other photographer who they've never had any interaction with, guess who's getting the job? You are, because you did them a favor.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like that. I think that's the thing that people don't realize about networking is that it has to be a two-way street. You have to be able to provide something, and it's not always just doing the job of being a photographer. Sometimes it is saying, I'm not the right person for this job. And having
which is scary.
It is. It's horribly scary.
But I always say it's worse that if you don't do a job, because then that's another thing. It's like kind of like the inner system is like referrals, because it's like we have our secret Facebook groups and someone will be like, okay, do you have a photographer in Miami? And people will be like, yeah. And then like for a portrait or something environmental, they're like, yeah, I work with this one. They were awesome. And some people are going to be like, don't work with this. And here's a book with this person. And then here's like a book long like response. So I always tell photographers, it's better to say no if you're going to do a subpar job. Now, again, there's going to be circumstances that there's things out of your control where everything went wrong. So it's not like your fault why like things happen. But if you're taking a job knowing full well you can't deliver even the basics, it's better to say no. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there is very scary, is like, because you feel like, oh, my livelihood depends on this, and this would be such a great job for me. Well, you know what? Sometimes you have to lay the groundwork for the next thing, and it's really frightening. I've done it a few times where it's just like, listen, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy for that. Like, this is just not my specialty, and you want somebody who specializes in this, and that's okay. And part of me is like, damn, I would have loved to have that. But you know what? You have to let it go. And you know, I love film, but I'm maybe not the person who's like, and I still shoot film, but I'm maybe not the person who is going to shoot and do a collage as well. That's just not my wheelhouse. That's just not, you know, what I am good at. Yeah. So how do you think that presentation has evolved with your experience as a creative director and photo editor? How has it evolved over that time period, from where it was when you started out to where it is now in the industry? Like, how do you think things have changed?
There's like a kind of twofold. I think like physically there's less books, which I miss. I love the physical print. Print is not dead. I still love going to museums and looking. I was never very good at printing at like black and white and stuff. Like I never could get that pure black. Never could do it. So I appreciate the master printers. And so more digital, but also I think photographers are starting to get more savvy and they're really leaning into, you know, being very strategic when they're, especially at portfolio reviews, of who they're doing their research and making sure they're curating their work, which they should be doing, to your audience. And really like Wired is different from, you know, kind of New York Times versus Southern Living versus Vogue, right? You know, 4 different things. And knowing that when you're pitching and when you're showing your work, you're smart, you do your research, and you're showing the work that's going to speak that publication or brand's language. Yeah. So I do see that as an uptick of going from less, you know, physical books to digital, which I miss, but, you know, understandably. But then also photographers are being more savvy and understanding like, okay, this is what I need to be having in my portfolio, and knowing how to, you know, curate their audience.
I think that curation is really important, and no matter what type of photography, you don't just throw it, especially if you're starting out. It's difficult in those first few years or whatever, when you don't really have a lot of stuff to draw on, but even then you should still be more curated in your approach. Like, don't show the same thing over and over again. Like, okay, we got it. You can do this. Like a couple times I can tell you do that shot. You can do that thing like that. Okay. I understand. if all you're showing is the same thing over and over and over again, like I'm not gonna like that's the only shot that I think you can do. That's that you need to. I think that what you're talking about is people leveraging digital. Man, I miss books. I miss having like here's my giant portfolio book. But having the savvy now that you're doing digital to separate that out and say like, okay, well these people will like this. And this person, like it's a great asset that photographers can take care of. But again, it means more curation on the photographer's side to understand. I think I keep getting into visual language, the language that each outlet or client or whatever is going to have, so that you can present them with work that fits their language, to speak their language, as opposed to like walking into a room.
You're using the right terminology I be using, because I be, when photographers come in, they're like, I always think about it in this terms of, like I said, with the different publications, like, well, just think of brands of Louis Vuitton and Tiffany's. The language they're going to be wanting to see from photographers is high-end luxury. This is before you're getting into the nitty-gritties of like maybe still life or something like, but when they come to your site, this is why I'm so passionate about presentations. Like, they want to feel like it's a luxe. It has like luxe kind of feeling, like immediately, because that is their target audience. Versus like, and again, there's no good and bad, but it's like, versus Target and Walmart. They are more their audience. They want to be more relatable. They want it, they feel more down to earth, because again, it's all about each brand has a different target audience. Now, it doesn't mean you can't shoot both. But you have to understand visually, how do I take, let's say, the aesthetic of Target and then the aesthetic of like, Tiffany? How do I merge that together where it feels like a relatable luxury kind of, where you're kind of falling in the middle? Yeah. And like I said, and again, there is it's not an exact science, but I love that you use language, because that's what I use, because it's just like, the thing is, what's going to be helpful for your presentation is knowing who you are as a photographer, but also knowing who you want to be shooting, what kind of work you want to be doing. Because then that's then you can be very intentional of how you're curating and how you're presenting yourself.
One of my favorite words, intention. Yeah. It's the getting like, I have this conversation a lot. I've had it on the podcast a couple times about like people want to get into, I want to do luxury weddings. And I'm like, oh, do you understand luxury brands? Like, what do you understand about luxury brands? And they're like, oh, I mean, they pay more money. Like, if that's all you're trying to think that it is, then you have lost like the experience. You walk into Bulgari, it's a different than like you're saying, like walking into Target to buy a watch. Like I'm just going to get a watch at at Target, as opposed to like I'm walking in here to like have an experience. And that's part of what why they're paying the money is this goes back to like everything I've ever learned about marketing. One of the first things we talked about, like was one of my photographer friends who's very good at marketing. And he was talking about, he's like, is the watch worth $100,000? Probably not. But it's like, why do people buy it? It's because they get to show it off. It's because like people know that they spent that much money on it. The experience of going to buy it, like all of these different things that are wrapped up in the brand, and understanding, whether it's luxury, whether it's more of a corporate feel, whatever it is, understanding the vibe, that these people are, project, and that the clients project. And that way, like you can fit and curate your images to that sort of thing. And
that's why I tell photographers, do your research. So it's like for a person who's like, okay, I want to shoot, luxury weddings. I'd be like, okay, start doing your research. Like if someone say you're getting married and you want to hire, a luxury, a photographer who shoots luxury weddings, start going to their website and you can see, you will have your preferences of, wow, this is, you know what I mean?
Luxury, what luxury is.
Yeah, exactly. Versus where like, ooh, this kind of like, they kind of cheeked out. Like, why is this like, then you get the understanding of, oh, let me look at my website. What does that feel? That's why I always say, go to your website and be like, after you've done your research, what is your website saying to people who are just coming onto it?
Or just look at similar brands.
Exactly.
Look at luxury brands. Look at whatever you're trying to get. Like people who are going for like authenticity and want things that are real. Look at other businesses that do that sort of like that is their thing, that is their type of brand, and see what words they choose, the visuals they choose. All of it's all married together, and it all works together to create the tapestry that is, the brand. What is an example in your experience of where someone changed the way they presented for a particular job or a project or whatever it was, that it had a positive effect? They went from like they were presenting it one way and then changed directions to have a greater impact with the client or with the editorial staff or whomever the audience was.
Well, I will use an example of a photographer I worked when I did a web edit, because I remember when I was working with this particular client, his photography, he was great for portrait photographer, but the web edit and curation, after I finished it, it was just night and day. Because as a photographer, I get it. You're in the weeds, and sometimes it just becomes like kind of like white noise static. And you're like, everything looks the same. You're not seeing like the difference of how you should be sequencing.
Right.
And I always say that's the power of like a good curation, of going from, where he was starting, where it was like, okay, this was good. When I did a few tweaks, and I'm like, you could be shooting for Vogue. You could be shooting for all these national brands, because all I did was just took some photos out, rejigger it. And again, this is all your work. We changed, the website got changed, went to a different, like more modern look of a website. And it was just a completely like 180, like, or 180. Like
180,
around,
other direction.
Yeah, 180 of like night and day, where like maybe you were getting more of the corporate, clients and stuff like that, where, look, dude, like you just up-leveled yourself. And again, didn't shoot any new work. All they did was like got a web edit from me, redid their website to fit kind of more of a modern vibe, and doing the research of understanding, telling me like, here's the clients you want to be working with, doing your research, looking at other photographers in your genre and seeing how they're laying out kind of their site. And it just was night and day. It's like, again, and it was just, it made me cry, because it was like, this is your work. It's like, you didn't do anything different. Like, you're amazing. It's just the power of presentation can change something. And it doesn't even have to be dramatic of you have to go and shoot a whole new portfolio. Right. Unless you're going into a whole new genre, right? So
you just need to adjust how you're like
exactly.
It can be granular, even like it doesn't have to be like a full sea change. It's just like changing to fit
just a
better.
Modern font, or just like a modern kind of layout on your thing.
Get rid of that Comic Sans.
Yes. I laugh because you'd be surprised. And I'm like, okay.
I'm not surprised.
I think my pet peeves is when photographers want to be cutesy. And I always have to preference, like, sometimes we have like 5 minutes to find a photographer for a story. And if you're being cutesy where, oh, look, and it was like this photographer, and it was like, oh, why? And I was like, why are the images blurry? Oh, you have to turn this little dial to put it in focus. No. I'm like,
don't
think of your website as like, make it as easy as possible for people to know who you are right away and to reach you.
Yeah. Like that is the one thing that will complain when I'm hiring people is like, I need to see the photo. How do I get to the photos? The whole point of me being here is to get to the photos. How do I get to the photos? And also, how do I get in touch with you? Because also, like, if I'm hiring a photographer as a photographer, if I'm hiring somebody to work with me as a subcontractor, I don't need to fill out your form. Like, I don't need to fill out your form.
That's why I say you can have the form, but have an email right up there. You don't have to have a phone number. Just have an email, because we want to feel like we're reaching a human being.
Right.
But you'd be surprised how it'd be like, how do I, now again, there's caveats to the rule of like, you know how like some photographers, we can just get through them through their Instagram. Because if we really need to work with a photographer or we want to, of course, we will, let me DM them to see if they reach out or something, because we're in a rush or panic. So there's always caveats to that rule, but most of put yourself in a good position and make it easy I always say, how many clicks does it take for people to get to what they need to be getting to your site?
Also,
and not make it overcomplicated. I think photographers think they have to have this big shiny thing. I always love a photographer in San Francisco. His website, and I always show him this one. His website is just a Tumblr page. It's literally just a Tumblr page. And you just scroll, and on the top it just says, "This is a photographer located in San Francisco. Here's my number, email," and then you just scroll it. And it fits this photographer's vibe, but it's like, I always show them that because this person has gotten work and I've worked with them, and you know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't have to even be that complicated. So I think photography, like the main takeaways of your site is just like, know who you are as a photographer and artist. And is that showing through? Is it easy to navigate?
Yeah.
Can I contact you via email? And do I know where you are?
Right. I think that's
that's the major thing. That's it.
Don't make me DM you on a social media platform.
I mean,
that's
we
the
may
worst.
have to if we have to, but it depends.
But you might not get the message. Like, as a photographer, it might end up in some stupid folder.
I know. I don't recommend that yet. Like, yeah, please always have an email. But again, there has been circumstances where we had to DM people because we just needed to work with them and talk to them and see if you're available because circumstances. But yeah, make it easy for us to get in touch with you. Don't make it complicated.
Right.
We just, at the end of the day, we just want to see pretty photos.
It's true. All right. So
don't make it hard for us.
Yeah. Make it easy for people to see your work. So as we sort of finish up, do you have any other advice for emerging visual creatives and how they can manage the perception of their work?
I would say know who you are visually, because that makes it easier for you to be intentional on how you present yourself to the world. Don't follow trends. And then always shoot. Continue to photograph, because that's how you get better. That's how you improve. That's how you develop mastery, where then you can pivot into other genres way quicker because you've picked up so many, tools and knowledge throughout the way through experience.
Yeah.
In order to get that, you have to just continue to perfect your craft. So don't fall in a trap of waiting for the next job, because the next job might not come until a year later.
Right.
Pick, and again, when you're doing projects on your own personal, it doesn't have to be complicated. Do a project on leaves, on trees or something. How is that in your vision?
Yeah.
Just continue to perfect the craft that you love.
Practice. Awesome.
Love it.
Thank you, Karen. Are you ready to take your photography business to new heights? Look no further than PicTime, the ultimate solution for photographers who demand more. Wow your clients with stunning branded galleries that showcase your work like never before. Let your customers preview selected photos on an array of printed goods. PicTime's smart photo store ensures your art shines on everything from canvases to coffee mugs. And take the stress out of marketing with PicTime's automation tools that empower you to effortlessly connect with clients, leaving you more time to focus on your craft. And revolutionize your workflow with PicTime's cutting-edge AI tool that allows you to search and sort images effortlessly, saving you time and ensuring you find that perfect shot in seconds. And that helps you strengthen vendor relationships with precision, curate vendor galleries, sending them just the right images, and enhancing your professional connections. Worried about switching hosts? Fear not. The expert staff at PicTime can seamlessly migrate your photos, making the transition smooth and stress-free. So are you ready to transform your photography experience? Visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/PicTime today and discover a world where creativity meets efficiency. Photographers, it's time to revolutionize your workflow with Aftershoot. Imagine culling through thousands of images in a matter of minutes, effortlessly flagging blurry shots and closed-eye pictures. Now you can stop imagining and meet your new photography sidekick, Aftershoot, the game-changing AI photo culling and editing software. Say goodbye to hours spent sifting through images as Aftershoot's AI can cull thousands of photos in just a few minutes, grouping together similar shots and flagging those blurry or closed eye pics. I have been using Aftershoot for a little over a year, and I have to say, it has transformed the workflow on the portrait side of my business, culling and organizing my photos from family portrait sessions to corporate headshots in a matter of minutes. For engagements, events, and weddings, it does a great job as a first pass cull for me, since I like to go through and make sure I didn't miss anything, but those family and group photos are all solidly organized together, and that saves me so much time. You can also make your artistic vision a reality. Aftershoot's automated AI editing is customizable to your unique style. Edit thousands of images in just a few clicks, achieving consistency and brilliance effortlessly. Sign up now at nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot and experience the Aftershoot advantage with your first month free. Transform your workflow and transform your business. Go to nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot or click the link in the episode notes and free up time for what you love by letting AI handle the heavy lifting so you can focus on capturing moments and not sorting through them.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
You might actually know this.
Okay.
The darkest substance known. Do you know what that is? Do you know it absorbs?
I do not know, actually. Oil?
No.
Black hole?
Well, black hole, I mean, technically, yes, a black hole, since no light can escape. No. Vanta Black, the pigment, Vanta Black, absorbs 99.965% of all visible light.
Where is it used?
It is used in, surprisingly, it's mostly used in, it was used in like NASA had some issues with it.
Okay.
But then the guy who owns it, what's his name? He's an artist. He's the same guy, I'm pretty sure, who did, oh man, what's like the bean? I think it's the same guy.
Oh, rip. Oh, okay.
But he like bought it. He bought like the copyright to it and like wouldn't let anybody else use it. It's also like horribly like it's bad for you. The pigments that are in it are like really awful. I was trying to do like a quick look up of who it is, but it's probably maybe better for me to not like name names. Anyway, it's a big deal that he made about, not selling it. Like he was selling it at exorbitant prices. So some other guy went out and figured out how to get it like almost as black using like chemicals and pigments that were like way better for the environment and for the people using it. And it's like just like 1/100th of a percentage point less black. And he was just like the you can only buy it off his website, and then you had to like check a box that said you weren't the guy who owns Vanta Black. He did the same thing. He had like the pinkest pink as well. He was like, you can only buy it if you're not this guy, because he's such a jerk about letting people use it. Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for being on. It was awesome. You're welcome to come back anytime. Where can people find you around the interwebs or wherever to see your stuff, and if they need help and they're looking for somebody to help them with their visual presentation?
Well, thank you for having me on. Everyone can find me at my website at blackvisualqueen.com, and then also all socials at blackvisualqueen.
Awesome. Keeping it simple. All right. Thank you again for being on. This is a wonderful conversation. I'm really, really happy that you came by.
Thank you.
And welcome back. A huge thank you to Karen Williams for coming on the podcast. Be sure to check out her links in the episode notes. While you're at it, you can also follow along on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Reddit at The Nerdy Photo. All one word, no underscores, dots, or dashes, at The Nerdy Photo. Tell us what you think about this or any other episode that we've done. Leave your photography-related questions or tell us what topics you'd like to hear about in the future. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and leave a review and or tell a friend about the show, and or preferably and, but possibly or.
Ew. Ew.
Yes, I'm very glad you don't eat humans. Until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.